Oh, hello, YouTube. Today on The Naughty Librarian, we are going over Mayfair Witches, Season 2, Episode 5. This episode is called Julian's Victrola, but really it should be called A Tale of Two Rowans. Real talk before we get into this episode. I usually like to maintain a certain separation of church and state in between source material and an adaptation. Because while it's the same story, usually it's being told through two different mediums, things are going to be told differently. Like an 800-page book getting put into like a 2-hour movie, you're going to have to cut out unimportant plot points. It's just how it is. So I try to take things with a grain of salt. And you know what? Sometimes adaptations even improve upon the source material. Like for Mayfair Witches, for example, I kind of prefer some of the changes they made for the show. Like they took out a lot of the incest and sexual assault. I'm A-okay with that. I think it's a good choice. But this episode in particular, it really upset me because it's the first time I've really been like, okay, I have read the book and y'all can go fuck yourselves. It was just a waste of time. This is 42 minutes of pointlessness. Like, they introduced Julian, who is like a really big deal in this series. He's a big character. A lot of fans are expecting to see this character. And they had 42 minutes to do something cool with him. And I'm going to tell you right now, they didn't do shit with this character. And I am very upset about it, and I'm going to try to rein it in. But for real, we've only learned 2.5 pieces of information this episode. So fact number 1. Lasher, where is he? Well, he's probably in Donleith, Scotland, because obviously that's where he is. That's where both the Mayfairs and Lasher came from. It seems logical they'd bring him there, right? Fact number 2, Julian has illegitimate children in Scotland, so there are Scottish Mayfairs to this day. And this next fact, I'm not even going to count as a whole fact, because frankly, it's just an amorphous blob of a vibe here, because we just got cryptic magical bullshit and a mention of Taltos and the old gods. That's it. End of list. That is the extent of the new knowledge we have in this episode. Why did we waste 42 minutes? But on that note, I guess let's get into what happened in the episode. Like, fair warning, I'm going to do an ass ton of book spoilers in this one, just because I want to feel like I accomplished something here. So let's go! The episode starts where the last episode ended. Rowan has entered the Victrola in Julian's realm. And she keeps trying to get his attention because he's just like super old and grizzled and like napping in front of the fire like a house cat. And she wakes him up, and Julian's doing kind of like almost a senile song and dance here, just to like fuck with her. And Rowan's like, you know what, man, fuck this, I'm out, okay? And she calls to Moira, and Moira pulls her out of the spirit world. Or so we thought. Turns out what had happened is that Moira pulled part of Rowan out of the spirit realm, but a part of her is trapped in there with Julian. It's kind of like a right brain, left brain situation. So the right brain, the one with all the feelings and emotions, got pulled out. And the left brain, all of the intellect and logic and reason, stayed in the Victrola. So it's a tale of two Rowans. And here's the kicker here. If right brain Rowan can't pull left brain Rowan out of the Victrola herself, she's gonna die in about 40 minutes. So ticking clock, the race is on here. And frankly, so little happens between Rowan and Julian that I'm just gonna TLDR it for you, okay? They spend the entire episode just bickering with each other because Julian's being really unhelpful and not telling Rowan the information she needs. And like, maybe he wants her to figure it out on her own, or maybe he's trying to stop her. It's kind of unclear in the episode. But like, at least in the books, like Julian wants Lasher dead. And since Rowan in the show is actively trying to find him and keep him alive, he might not be trying to help her all that much because, hey, here's a book spoiler for you. The only reason Lasher would have been taken to Donleith in this instance is because they're going to use him as a sacrifice. So I'm thinking Julian's A-okay with Lasher being in Scotland. He knows he has a son out there who's going to take care of business for him. That's what I got out of it. We will see. Time will tell in future episodes. And like I was saying, Rowan and Julian, they didn't do very much with each other. When they're not spending their time bickering, they are able to see what's going on in like the living world because Julian has this little model house. and it's the Mayfair house, and you can see in all the windows, and you can see all the people and hear what they're saying. Julian is somewhat magically connected to it. I think Julian uses this a lot to see what's going on with the family, because he could still have some influence over this, you know, miniature version of the real world's house. And as they bicker and talk during the episode, Julian does mention his mother, Marguerite, and he talks about her bringing him to Scotland and like learning from her, etc. And then he also drops the little bombshell like, oh, Rowan, you think you're special because you gave Lasher a body? Well, I gave him a body too. I let him use mine, girl. So like, let's not say he liked you more than me. And that's pretty much the extent of all of Rowan and Julian's interactions in the Victrola. Let's do some book spoilers to feel like something happened here. So in the book, Marguerite was Julian's mother. TLDR on Marguerite, okay? She had a bunch of husbands. They all ended up dying under mysterious circumstances, and turns out what she was doing was getting their bodies and then like Frankensteining them together to build new bodies for Lasher to possess and like take out, because Lasher's like innate power was healing. So Lasher would like possess the body and he'd be able to heal it a little bit so he could like animate it and use it for a bit. And by use it for a bit, I mean he and Marguerite just banged the bejesus out of each other pretty much. And at the end of the day, these were dead bodies. So Lasher wasn't able to bring it back to life. He could just make it work for a little bit. So it was like brief interludes of Marguerite having sex with corpses that Lasher is in. That's Marguerite for you, everybody. So I think it's safe to say that Julian was not close with his mother, okay? She was a creepy weirdo playing with corpses in the attic all day. She didn't really have a lot of time to devote to raising her children, let alone bringing them to Scotland. She never brought them to Scotland. Julian was always much closer with his grandmother, Marie Claudette. And she was the one who taught him witchcraft, and she taught him about Lasher and what she had learned about Lasher in her tenure with him. And she even taught Julian tricks he could use to block out Lasher from his mind. And the show never mentions her at all, but in the book she was kind of a big deal, and one of the main reasons why Julian ever became suspicious of Lasher in the first place. And from this point on, Julian's story in the books is really interesting and a lot of fun, and they put 0% of it in the show, and I'm upset about it. So here's like an abbreviated version here. So Julian, he was the unofficial designee of his generation. Technically, his sister Catherine was the designee, but she really wasn't that powerful of a witch. She had like a little bit of a powers of like a medium, but end of list, she didn't really have anything else going on for her, and she didn't really care about it. Realistically, it was Julian with all the power and magic. And because Julian was the one with all the power and magic, he and Lasher spent a whole lot of time together. However, they didn't always have like a great relationship with each other, and Julian was very suspicious of him, and he wanted to know what his intentions are. Like, why are you sticking with our family? Like, what's the deal here? So Julian needed to find out information. The only place for that information was in Lasher's own mind. So what Julian would do, he would let Lasher possess his body, and Lasher would take out Julian's body on the town and have a good time and just like live it up. And while Lasher was captain of the ship here, Julian's mind was still in there, even though it was in the background. So what he would do was start digging around through Lasher's memories and his fragments of memories he had to try to figure out what the origin of this whole connection was. And in the process of digging through all of Lasher's thoughts, Julian was able to kind of pinpoint where Donleith, Scotland would have been, because it's not on the map anymore. It's just like a ruin. He and his daughter, Mary Beth, who also isn't brought up in the show at all, they go over to Scotland and they investigate, and Julian finds out enough information from being in these ruins to know a bit more of Lasher's true identity, the history here, and that ultimately he is a danger to this family. Because yes, Lasher may love his witches that he's attached to, but he also highly resents them. And as soon as Lasher gets a body, his like first goal is to destroy the Mayfairs. So Julian's like, yikes, bro, we can't let that happen. Julian, he takes a bunch of money and he gives it to like some scholars in Scotland. He's like, hey, set up an institute for archaeology in Donleith. I want you to excavate all of the ruins here, and you're going to report any data about the history of the area, the culture of the people. And then Julian would use all the information gathered by these archaeologists to like start putting a plan of action in together to eventually destroy Lasher. But while he was in the process of putting his plan together, he has a stroke. And he is like bedridden for weeks recuperating from it. And while Julian was incapacitated, Mary Beth just so happened to actually take Lasher's side in this argument. She didn't believe Julian that like Lasher was uncontrollable and would hurt the family. Mary Beth was like, oh, I'm powerful enough to like handle Lasher if he thinks he's gonna get out of line. And like he gives me power, so like I'm not gonna let you destroy him. So she like takes all of Julian's research, every fact, every piece of knowledge he's gained about Taltos and Lasher, and she takes it all of the yard and she burns it. That way, no one else in the family would ever find this information and try to stop Lasher ever again. And Julian does find out about this, but mind you, he's quite old. He had already had a stroke and he knows his time is limited. So that's when he started the process of like attaching his spirit to this Victrola so he could come back and collect data and maybe be able to help a different generation of family come together and stop Lasher. And yeah, that's like the basic life story for Julian. There's a lot in there that we haven't gone over here, but mostly I'm making Julian sound a bit like he's a good guy. And I just want to clarify that he's not the good guy in this story either. He's just a less worse guy. He did a lot of really horrible, awful things too. I just haven't discussed, but at least I discussed anything at all because the show did none of this. But speaking of which, let's get back into the episode. Let's talk about what's happening to, you know, right brain Rowan out in the real world. So Rowan is just kind of like having a lot of big feels because she's basically all of Rowan's feelings at this point, and she's trying to figure everything out that's happened. But mind you, her intellect is trapped in the Victrola, so she's not really getting very far. And then things get even more complicated when Lark shows up at the house and he's like, Rowan, we need to talk. And she's like, what do you want? And he's like, listen, I stole your DNA and did a sequence on it, and like, hey, what the fuck? You have like 4 extra chromosomes. And this is kind of a crossroads for Rowan. She has 2 options here. One, she could erase his memory and all of the memories he's ever had of her so that she just doesn't exist to him anymore, which would keep the family secret safe. Or 2, she could just say fuck it and tell Lark the whole truth. And since we're dealing with feelings, Rowan, she decides to just tell the whole wild truth to Lark that like, hey, guess what? I have those extra chromosomes because I'm a witch. Like, I have magical powers, and that's why the extra DNA is there. It's magic. And then it's just kind of verbal diarrhea because she tells him the whole thing. She tells him like Jojo and Daphne are trapped in a thrall in the house. She visited a ghost in a Victrola. She gave birth to a demon something man baby last week that grew into manhood and started killing people, and now she's got to go find him because she needs more power to like save other people in her family. That's all that's been going on this season, pretty much. And somehow Lark listens to all of this and is like, you know, this actually makes a lot of sense. And also Lark and Rowan have this whole romantic past, and like he definitely has feelings for her still. He wants to help her. So Lark gets like a science idea. He's like, Rowan, do you have any more DNA from Lasher? Because what I can do is take DNA and then make it replicate, so then we have a whole ass ton of DNA, and then maybe it'll be like Lasher is here, at least a lot of his DNA is, and that'll give you a power boost even if you don't have his physical body here. And Rowan's like, that is an amazing idea. Let's go. I've got his baby teeth. So they just start like cutting up baby teeth to get DNA. Okay, so you know in the book, there's actually like 3 main characters. Rowan, and then there's this guy Aaron, who is like the Talamasca agent assigned to the MAYFAIR case. and this guy named Michael, who is Rowan's husband. And in the show, they don't have Aaron or Michael, but they do have Cyprian, who I feel is, Aaron's stand-in, which is fine. Aaron's like an 80-year-old British dude, and Cyprian's like this hot young guy who also has powers. Like, I get it. It's a fair swap. But then you don't have Michael, right? I am almost 100% sure they are setting up Larkin to be the new Michael, which I guess is fine. It would give Rowan and Michael more things in common than they have in the book. But in the book, there is a character named Larkin, and he was a colleague of Rowan's and a geneticist, except I believe he was much older than Rowan, and there was no romantic history whatsoever between them. And in the book, Larkin mysteriously disappears due to the Talamasca likely killing him. And then they steal all of his research and they make sure it doesn't get out. Let's hope the Talamasca doesn't kill him like they do in the books. But I'm thinking they're taking Larkin and just saying, you're Michael now, here you go. So we have that to look forward to, I suppose. I do like that he knows Rowan's secret and is just like, yeah, magic. Fine, I'll buy into it. It's just, I don't know why they're mixing these characters that don't need to be mixed. But speaking of mixing characters together, back in the episode, in the real world, Rowan's 40 minutes are almost up. So, she better figure some shit out real quick or she's gonna die. So she starts like getting very sick and dizzy, and she's like, am I not myself? What is wrong? There's something missing. And she figures out that a piece of her must be still trapped in the Victrola. So she needs to be her own anchor and like pull herself out of it. And she is successful. She like grabs herself, gives herself a big old hug, and pulls her other side of her mind out of the Victrola. And as left brain Rowan is leaving the Victrola, she happens to see a bottle of whiskey that Julian was giving to her, and it said Kilbride, Scotland on it, aka the real location of Don Leith. So she finally got the one piece of fucking information she needed this whole episode. So now, boom, we have a combined Rowan. She's out in the real world. She's still in it with Lark because her emotions decided that she loves him, and her mind's like, all right, fine. And she's like, Larkin, will you go to Don Leith with us? And that's the end of Rowan's story for this episode, but we do have a brief glimpse about what's actually going on in Don Leith. So Albrecht, he's there with Lasher, where he brought him, and Lasher is still confused. He's like, I don't remember anything here. You keep telling me this is my home, but like, I don't know nothing here. And Albrecht's like, just give it time, bro. It's okay. We're all here to serve you. You know, you're king of the castle, okay, bud? And mind you, he still keeps Lasher in a room that locks only from the outside. So is he really king of the castle here, or is he a prisoner? And then Albrecht's accomplice is finally revealed. And guess who it is? It's Ian, who is Julian's illegitimate son in Scotland, Cortland's brother. Ian from Scotland's there. He was the one working with Albrecht this whole time. So Ian comes in and he finally gets to meet Lasher, but he keeps calling him Ashlar, which is a different name. And he's like, why are you calling me Ashlar? We don't get into it right now, but like, since I'm gonna do book spoilers, I'll give you a little rundown on Ashlar. A long, long time ago in the land before time here, the Taltos were a race of people. And Ashlar was actually a real person. He was the king of the Taltos, mainly because he was the most clever and he had the ambition to lead. And then, like in most things, human beings showed up and ruined everything. It started with like the Roman legions, but Ashlar still survives all these raids. He takes his people, the Taltos, and he moves them to Don Leith, Scotland. And then things are okay for a little bit. That is until the human beings finally find them again. And wouldn't you know, they're bringing Christianity with them. However, these were like the first original Christians who were all basically hippy-dippy people who were preaching about loving your neighbor and treating everybody with respect and kindness. So they were like cool dudes. And like Asher was like, yeah, you know, Taltos believe a lot of those same things. Like maybe we should be friends. So Ashlar actually ends up converting to Christianity. And he converted so hard to Christianity that he becomes a priest. Like he went full Christian. And honestly, him doing this and taking a lot of like the Taltos with him into Christianity caused a big civil war in the Taltos. And a lot of the Taltos ended up getting killed because all of the humans banded together with Ashlar. And Ashlar's like, ooh, this is gonna be a problem because when humans get together, they turn into a murder mob real quick and they all know we're different. Uh-oh. However, the humans never ganged up on Ashlar because he was a celibate priest and like he was a good priest. So they're like, ah, you're cool, you could stay. But Ashlar is still like, you know, I'm not gonna wait around for y'all to turn on me, so I'm gonna get to stepping. So Ashlar leaves Donleith. He wanders around for just centuries and centuries. However, in Donleith, it had become kind of like a folk tradition to have a Taltos as your priest. It was like just what was done. And now Ashlar's gone, so no one can ask him about it. And then like the mythos of this just warps over the centuries until it turns into like a full-on Midsommar type of tradition where they want to sacrifice Taltos to keep them safe from evil and like help the crops and stuff. So yeah, things took a turn from like friendly Taltos priests to we're gonna murder them all real quick. And every time a male Taltos happens to be born in Donleith, they go, oh my god, so cool. You are the reincarnation of Saint Ashlar. You're gonna be our new priest now. So long as, you know, they can control him and he's willing to be a celibate priest. If not, they just murder them. So I think likely that's where next episode's gonna go into, you know, Lasher's real backstory and also the weird pagan midsummer festival that they're gonna be doing. However, I wanted to tell everybody about Ashlar for just a hot second because I highly doubt they're gonna bring the real Ashlar into the show. Anyway, we're at the end of the episode now. Albrecht and Ian, they seem to be working together. Albrecht is real excited. He's like, ooh, when are you gonna start the ceremony? I want to watch. Like, he's very into like learning about this tradition of like Midsommar here. And Ian's like, oh, really? And he slits Albrecht's throat and throws him down the stairs. So he has been betrayed by Ian. And then boom, that's the end of the episode. Realistically, that's a good ending to an episode. But like, I probably made this episode a lot more exciting because they actually added in all of the stuff from the books they completely left out of the story. But yeah, it was 42 minutes of spinning our fucking wheels. It was really boring and it upset me. But I'll be back for episode 6 and I will tell you all of the great details that they probably are gonna leave out. I don't know why I'm so mad. I'm usually better at not getting mad at an adaptation, but this week, ooh, it really got to me. Let me know in the comments down below, what is something you're just desperate to finally get out of these remaining 3 episodes this season? There's gotta be something you're expecting, and if so, what is it? Please let me know in the comments. If you like this video, make sure you give it a like. If you want to see more videos, make sure you subscribe. And if you want cool, exclusive content, including early access to videos and a book club, you can consider becoming a channel member or a patron. Links for that are in the description down below. And on that note, I'll see you guys soon. Goodbye.